Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. There are valuable lessons for children in the new book by the Phunko Brownz. It's titled, I Tied My Shoes. And I get to learn all about this book and about the Phunko Brownz. I got the Phunko Brownz here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey.
Well, this is really exciting. I tied my shoes. Can you tell me what readers are going to find here?
They're going to honestly find a lovable book about a young boy named Barry, a.k.a. Flash, and it teaches you how to tie your shoes. That's the valuable lesson. It talks about how they want to go outside and play, and they come and ask the parents. Of course, you got to get permission before you go outside. And once he gets his shoes, he realizes he doesn't know how to tie them. So us as a family, we definitely gather around him and teach him, and we go step by step, and we also have a song about it as well. But the book is definitely something you want to get a read in. It's great.
And can you tell me about Phunko Brownz and everything that's involved in that?
We have I'm the Queen. Say hi, I'm the Queen.
Hi, I'm the mom. How are you?
We got Rest Up. That's me. I'm the dad. We got Day Off.
Hi, I'm the oldest son.
Then we got Lay Plays.
Hi, I'm Layla.
And then we got Barry, a.k.a. Flash.
Hi, I'm Barry.
I love it. How did the idea for this come about?
Well, Barry didn't know how to tie his shoes.
It's about me tying my shoes.
Yep. We realize it's an issue that a lot of people don't know how to tie their shoes, so we wanted to contribute in our own way.
Yeah, I was going to ask about what the readers were that you had in mind for this. So was this really young children, or was it broader than that?
It's actually broader. Young children all over the world, but also we created a song for it that you can find, same title, I Tied My Shoes by the Phunko Brownz. And once I had the song mixed, the actual engineer, he's 19, he said, man, if I would have had this song, I would have learned how to tie my shoes earlier. And some people still deal with it. I've met a lot of people that are 19 and 20 and even like 10 and 12 that still don't know how. So it reaches everyone.
Wonderful. And I understood this was also illustrated by you as well. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, yeah, it was a process.
Yeah, it was a process. So what we did, we first started trying to illustrate ourselves. We wanted to make sure our cartoon characters were like live action, like a similarity to who we are as human beings, make it more realistic instead of the, typical cartoon pictures. But it was just an evening. We were spending at home. It was summertime. My two eldest children, which is 16 and 12, they were going outside with my 6-year-old. He unfortunately did not know how to tie a shoe at the time, and so he asked them, can they help him? And they gracefully untied their shoes, and they taught him step by step how to tie his shoes. So the illustration shows exactly how to do it, step by step, until you get to the end.
So when it comes to writing and publishing and everything, is this your first effort, or have you done this kind of thing before?
Yes, this would be our first time ever doing anything like this.
Wow, congratulations. That's so exciting. How long did this take you? Was it a really long process because it was your first time?
1 year.
Then after that year of hard work, finally the day came, you got your first copies in of I Tied My Shoes. You got to hold them, look at them. What was that like?
It's amazing. This is something that we feel will continue for generations. Down the line, something we can all say we contributed to and everybody had an effort in. It was a beautiful moment.
I was so happy to see my family in a book.
Oh, I love it. Do you have any advice that you could offer, any of you, to the aspiring authors that are out there?
Just never give up. When you don't have anything or anyone to help you at first, it seems impossible. But definitely God made this possible, and we created it, and we're here now promoting our book.
If you're going to do it, you really need to craft out some time. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to have time dedicated for this specific project if you are going to start writing a book. from start to finish. You need to have some assistance if you can have some help, or just going to like libraries and just checking out their books and seeing what, who they use to illustrate their books and stuff like that will be a help as well.
Well, what a fun book this sounds like, and it's really important, too. And I encourage everybody listening, definitely go seek this out. Again, it's titled, I Tied My Shoes. It's written by Phunko Brownz and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so you can get it everywhere that you normally go to get your books, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Phunko Brownz, it was great having you on the show, great meeting you all, and thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Author DeLayne Kollross offers inspiring reflections in her new book, An Evening in the Word. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. DeLayne, the author, is here with me. DeLayne, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you talking with me here tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate meeting you and having this opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm excited to learn all about An Evening in the Word. So, DeLayne, could you tell me what this is all about?
Okay. An Evening in the Word is a book that uses scriptures from different translations of the Bible, and they're woven together in paragraphs and chapters on specific topics like grace, joy, prayer, God's awesomeness, hopefully to make them easy to read like you're reading a novel. The book is not a list of topical scriptures, but it's a flow of related scriptures from both the Old and the New Testament, and they're blended together. The references, which might be needed later to study, are found in the back of the book as endnotes so that they are not distracting during the reading of the book. And the reader can then, I hope, just immerse themselves in the truths that are presented from the Word of God.
DeLayne, what kinds of readers do you think would be into this the most?
Well, I would hope, I have a couple of thoughts in mind. People who are searching for God, they want to know Him because of their past or their current challenges or questions that they might have about their faith. And it could be read straight through, or they could pick and choose chapter topics to read one at a time. The other group of people would be a Christian in any walk of their faith in God, so that they could relax and read and enjoy the messages combined. I'm sure part of it would be educational and they'd grow in their faith, as I do, even myself when I use it as my personal devotional. But it just has a way of getting through from the head to the heart and making changes in a person's life.
What made you decide to write this? How did the idea come about for this, DeLayne?
Well, it's very interesting. I was sitting in the sanctuary of our church. I worked there at the time, so I was able to sit up on the platform all by myself. And I just felt like the Lord was prompting me to put this together, but not just a list of the scriptures. So it developed years ago, and I've been working on it ever since.
Have you ever done anything like this before when it comes to writing and publishing and everything?
No, not exactly like this. I have done lots of poems for individuals. I've done scripts for dance recitals and that sort of thing. I've done creative invitations and voiceovers, but never have I put it all together like this in a published book.
And now that you are a published author, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
Oh, my goodness. Well, the Lord has fulfilled the lifelong dream. I was a reader as a child, and I always dreamed that someday I would publish a book. As I grew and went to college and so forth, I kind of thought maybe that was askew a little bit, and then this opportunity came up. And I think that probably the greatest reward, I may or may not ever know about it, is that people's lives are actually changed by reading it.
You got to tell me about that moment whenever you finally got your first copy in of this and you got to hold An Evening in the Word. What was that like?
That was so wonderful. I anticipated the box of books being mailed to me, and when they arrived, my daughter was the one who saw them on the front porch, and she actually took my picture opening this box. It's like having your first grandchild. It's hard to explain what it feels like to open up that box and then hold the book in your hand. It was very exciting.
So what are the chances that we might see some more books from you here in the future?
Oh, yes. I'm already working on volume 2 of a book with the same title, just different topics. There are many, many topics, obviously, that can be written about.
Well, it sounds like a lot of readers are going to be blessed by the pages of this book. Again, the title is An Evening in the Word. It's written by DeLayne Kollross, and it's published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it at Amazon, or Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. And DeLayne, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks again for talking with me.
Oh, thank you. This has been very enjoyable.
The book that's out now, written by Christopher Dickson and Kate Crowder, aims to teach children how to take better care of themselves physically, mentally, and spiritually. It's titled How the Wellness Crew Met, Wellness Cove. This is book 1 of the Healthy Planet, Healthy Me series. And we're going to find out all about this book. One of the co-authors, Chris, is with me now. Chris, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Great. Thanks for having me, Corey.
Absolutely. I'm really curious about how the Wellness Crew met. Can you tell me about this book and about the series?
Well, I'm a vascular surgeon, and I've been treating some pretty sick patients for a long time. And a lot of what I treat is preventable. So my real passion is wellness. And I think the secret to wellness is going to be to get to kids early before the food industry and some other, influences get to them. So this series that I started is basically the kids travel around to different islands in the trade wind keys. They meet new characters. And in the first book, book 1, the 4 characters come together, they meet, they form the wellness crew. They seem to know a lot about wellness, but a bookkeeper tasks them with coming up with their secrets. And if they do, he'll put it into a book so they can share it with other kids. So they journey around Paradise Key. They come up with their 7 secrets to living a happy and healthy life. And that's basically the crux of the story.
What sorts of readers would you say you were writing this for?
Well, I think it's basically ages 5 to 9, kind of 1st through 3rd grade. I would love for parents to do the workbooks with their kids because all the principles that we teach apply for adults too. And, it's really children's wellness is really family wellness because if the parents aren't on board, then it's harder to convince, to get the kids to be doing the right things. So we teach not just traditional wellness, nutrition, exercise, and stress management, but we also teach, a lot of other things like, spiritual wellness, emotional wellness, the importance of having friends, the importance of having support, the importance of believing there's a loving God who has a plan for them. So it's a pretty comprehensive program, but it's presented in a very fun and interactive way.
Chris, was there a spark, anything in particular that made you say, hey, I got to get started on this book, especially the idea for the plot and the characters and everything?
Well, for the kids to enjoy it, it's got to be engaging. We're not just telling them, to eat fruits and vegetables. The 7 guiding principles are meant to be memorable and are principles that the children come up with and then are reinforced in the other books in the series are love yourself and love others just as they are. Enjoy this amazing planet. We're real concerned about the environment. And if kids are glued to their phones and don't appreciate the planet, they're not going to be motivated to take care of it. And that's also how we get at exercise. We want kids to get out and get fresh air, move and exercise. We teach them to chill every day. I think real importantly, we teach them it's fun to learn and it's cool to be smart. And the books, we make learning fun and the kids, enjoy working with each other and having different talents and combining their different talents to solve problems. We teach them about nutrition to fuel their body with the nutrients that they need, treasure your family, and then use your talents to help others and help the planet. So those 7 guiding principles, if you look at them, those are pretty hard to argue with.
Absolutely. This is a great message. How long did it take you to write this and then get it published?
It took a couple years. Like I said, I'm a full-time physician and I don't have a lot of free time, but it's just so important. And our healthcare system is really broken. We wait till you're sick and then try to fix you. And the much better solution is just not to get sick. And it's not, wellness is not just about not getting sick. It's also about the quality of your life. So if you're taking care of yourself physically and mentally and spiritually, life is just so much better. And again, that applies to adults and kids.
Now, Chris, you got to tell me about that moment when you open up your mailbox and there it finally was, your first copy. You got to hold this thing in your hands. It actually came into fruition. What was that like?
Yeah, it's a great thing to see it, in print. So hopefully that we'll get it into the hands of lots of people who we can help. I think we can help, again, both the children and their parents, hopefully.
Well, what a great message this book has. It's so important, and I encourage everyone listening to go definitely check it out. Again, it's titled How the Wellness Crew Met, Wellness Cove. It's book 1 of the Healthy Planet, Healthy Me series, and it's co-written by Christopher Dickson and Kate Crowder. It's published by Covenant Books, so you can find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Chris, thank you again for joining me and tell me all about this work. I had a really nice time.
Great, Corey. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Strong and Courageous. It's a story of faith and resilience, and it's the new book written by Celeste Walsh. And we'll be talking about this right now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Celeste, the author, is with me. Celeste, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you, Corey.
I'm excited to have you, and I'm excited to learn about Strong and Courageous. Celeste, what are readers going to find here?
I think that what they're going to find the most is that they're going to find a story about friends who get to take a trip of a lifetime, and during part of the travels, one of the girls is abducted, and she's going to have to really rely on her faith and some strangers to help her through. I think they can expect a little bit of suspense, a little bit of drama, and a little bit of romance along the way.
Oh, I love it. What sorts of readers were you writing this for?
My target audience was young women, but I've been pleasantly surprised over the last few months. I've had several men who have read the story as well, and I've gotten some really positive feedback from them. So I think that it speaks to probably people of all ages because we all go through difficult situations, maybe not as dramatic as what happens in the book, but we all go through difficult circumstances, and I think that makes it relatable to most people.
Definitely. So what sparked this idea, Celeste? How did you come up with this?
Well, it was kind of a very random thing. I was laying in my bed one night and the idea hit me for the story, and I laid there and could not go back to sleep until I got up and wrote a small portion of it down so that I wouldn't forget it. This all happened during the quarantine in 2020. And since I had so much free time on my hands, I just started writing, and it just kind of evolved and flowed from there.
Is this your first time doing this kind of thing, or are you familiar with it all?
It is. This is my first published book. I had kind of dabbled at writing a story a long time ago, but I couldn't quite put all the pieces together. And so this is the first time that I felt really confident in what I was writing, and it flowed very easily. And as a matter of fact, I pretty much typed out the majority of the story in about 2 to 3 months, and then just kind of made some tweaks here and there along the way.
Then once you were done with your manuscript, you hand that off to the publisher, and you begin that whole process. Celeste, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things?
The most challenging part of the process so far was me being confident enough to actually pick up the phone and talk to publishing companies and get some information. I actually kind of sat on it for about 2 years, just being a little nervous that, what would people think? Would they like my book? And just how it would turn out. And so once I actually stepped out in faith and said, I'm going to do this, I started having some pretty good conversations with Christian Faith Publishing, and they answered a lot of questions for me and gave me some really good pointers and tips. And so we began the process. But to answer your question, I think time is probably the most challenging portion of it, just trying to juggle life in general and doing edits and reads and rereads and trying to make sure that everything was okay. I think time was probably the biggest obstacle.
Then after all that time you worked on it, that one day you go out to your mailbox, open it up, and there it is. Your first copies came in, Strong and Courageous. You actually got to hold the book in your hands, Celeste. What was that like for you?
Honestly, it was almost, not quite, but it was almost like having a newborn baby that somebody just hands to you and places in your hands and says, here, this is yours. And there was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of joy in that process, very emotional. And it was pretty satisfying and rewarding to realize that I'm holding something that I actually created. So that's how I would relate it.
I think readers are going to really love this book. Again, it's titled Strong and Courageous. It's written by Celeste Walsh and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Celeste, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show and telling me all about your work.
Thank you, Corey, for having me here this evening. I've really enjoyed getting to discuss my book with you, and I appreciate your time.
The Little Cedar. It's a new book. It's all about faith, purpose, and divine guidance. It's written by D.A. Whitehouse, and we're going to talk all about this book. The author, Dan, is here with me at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Dan, thank you for joining me. Really appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm really interested in learning all about the Little Cedar, Dan. Can you tell me about it?
You know, it's a children's picture book. It's about a little cedar tree, and he is destined and wants to be something great. And sometimes, it's not exactly what we think, we want to be great, but ends up being something else.
And what sparked this? Where'd you get the idea for it?
I do enjoy Christmas stories, and it's just been rolling around in my head for a while and just kind of came together. Me and my wife had kicked it around and just kind of came together.
When it comes to writing, publishing, everything like that, Dan, are you new to this or have you done it before?
This is my first children's book. I've had an article published on real estate, which is my career, probably about 15 years ago on first-time home buying. But this is my first children's book, yes.
Once you got started on this, how long of a journey are we talking about here? Clear up through when it was published and going out and everything.
Well, it took a long time. It's been rolling around in my head for probably about 10 years. And then during COVID, my wife really inspired me and kind of pushed me to kind of get it done and put it on paper and start doing the artwork. And so it kind of came together during then with a little bit of extra free time. And it's a long process, but it's finally come together.
Yeah, and there's nothing like seeing that finished product, especially after all that time and work that you put into it. So when you got your first copy in of The Little Cedar and you actually got to hold it and look at it for the first time, Dan, what was that like?
It was actually a special day because we were actually celebrating our 7th wedding anniversary. And so I surprised my wife with a copy of it. And so we kind of got to take a look at it together. So it was really exciting.
I love it. Now, when you think about it, you're a published author, your work is out there for the world. What's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Really probably just hoping it makes a difference in children's and adults, the lives as they read it. Gives them a teaching, something to, inspire and guide their, children. And it has something for us all. There's a bigger message, and I hope it catches fire and people really take it to heart that, God knows, where we are needed. We don't necessarily, might not be the place that we think, but God always knows where we're needed.
A lot of authors are often surprised by what's involved in the publishing process. It is often long and there's a lot of things involved. Dan, for you, what was the most challenging part of that publishing end of things?
It actually flowed pretty well. They did a really good job, helping us out and guiding us. And really, it was just really getting the final product together, really, deciding on what words to have in there, what paragraphs, and just things like that. All in all, it was a pretty smooth process once it went into publication and working with the editors and people of that nature.
And something that's super important when it comes to children's books especially are the illustrations. So how difficult of a process was that for you to get these illustrations lined up exactly how you wanted to with the story?
That was probably the hardest part for me, really deciding what style of art to use, what route to go, on that end. And that was really probably the longest process to try and, come together and figure out. Once we decided what route to go, we just kind of hit it head on and push through.
Was writer's block ever something that you had to deal with along the way?
Yeah, it always, you write it quite a few times and you edit it and you write it a few times. And most authors will tell you they're never, it always seems like you're never quite happy with the finished product. There's always something you feel like you could change or tweak. But at the end of the day, you really just have to get it out there.
So what are the chances that we might see something like a follow-up to The Little Cedar or another book from you in the future?
Right now we're working on a book about being that I'm in real estate. A girl who's going to be moving with her family, and she's moving from the city to the country. And so it's a really big change. And so being that I'm in the field, I would like to make it a little bit more educational for adults and for children, that they can kind of enjoy the process of moving. Just different things to make the process a little bit more enjoyable. And that'll be called Moving with Grace. So we're working on that now.
Wonderful. Well, I think young readers are really going to love this book. Again, it's titled The Little Cedar. It's written by D.A. Whitehouse, and it's published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it everywhere. Head on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores. You'll be able to pick it up. Dan, it's been great talking with you tonight. I really appreciate you coming on and telling me all about the Little Cedar and everything else you got going on. Thanks again.
Yep, thank you so much for having me.
With Love to All My Neighbors. It's the name of the new book written by Martha Hernandez, and it's a collection of poems and reflections. We're going to talk all about this. The author Martha is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Martha, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Well, I'm glad to. Very glad.
I'm glad to be learning all about your book, With Love to All My Neighbors. So, Martha, can you tell me about it?
Well, it's something that just came about. I never planned it. It's just a matter of life experiences down through the years, and God gave me a talent that I could write poetry, which was really a surprise to me, at the beginning. So as time went by, experiences would happen, and then I'd think about it and pray about it, and God would give me a poem about it. And in the last 60 years, that's exactly what's been happening.
Martha, what kinds of readers do you think would enjoy this the most?
Well, I think just about anybody would, because we all, God is God for all of us, and He's wonderful, and He loves us, and I think everybody could enjoy it. I really do. I'm not just saying that. I mean that with all my heart. I think it would be an encouragement, because when I started 60 years ago, I was like so many are today, confused and just really not in good shape mentally and all that. Then I got born again, and God put me on a brand new path, and that's what He has for all of us. So it's just my way of expressing what happened to me.
Is this your first time being published then?
Well, yes, I had 2 songs published, but that was several years back. About at least, I think, 20 or 30 years ago.
What did it feel like that day when you finally got your first copy in and you got to hold With Love to All My Neighbors for the first time?
It was a wonderful feeling. It just showed me that God is so surprising, too. And when you really turn your life over to Him, He just has a new way for you. It's something happened I just never expected. It was truly like a miracle for me. It was a miracle. It was something that I did. It was like something I could do, and I did, and I shared it with my family and my friends and at church and different churches sometimes. But it was like, it was just something that God had given me or shared thoughts with me, and I was able to put them down, and it was just wonderful. And so when I'd tell them to somebody else, they really enjoyed them so much. And so many times I would hear, you need to get that published. And I would think, that would be too big of a thing. I wouldn't even think was possible. But finally I did. And I was 86 when I did it. 85, actually, when I started.
And how was that publishing process for you? Was that a challenging thing for you?
Yes, it was. Because my eyesight is limited because of my age. And I'm not real computer skilled because I just didn't get into it. And now I could do a little of it, but when you can't see, then you're really limited. I can see. I don't want to make it sound like I can't see, but I can't read or anything like that. So it was. But I had family. My kids helped a lot. My son just kind of took over. And without him, I don't think I really could have got it done. He did all the computer stuff.
Have you given thought to maybe publishing more in the future?
Well, I might if God lets me live, but, now I'll be 87 in November, so it's like, well, I don't know about that, we'll see. If I'm still around, maybe, but either way, it's okay, whatever happens. I just want to share about the Lord to other people. He's just something just so wonderful. My life was so changed little by little as I grew up, as I grew older and learned. I really saw life from His point of view, and it's so beautiful when you do. He only wants the best for us, and so when we do what He wants, we get happy too. He's happy, and so are we.
Well, I think a lot of readers are really going to be blessed by this book. Again, the title is With Love to All My Neighbors. It's written by Martha Hernandez, and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Martha, it's been really wonderful talking with you here tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
The new book by Emmanuel Germain. It emphasizes faith and preparedness for the return of Jesus. It's titled Messages from God to His People. And we're going to be talking all about this. James, the author, is with me now. James, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I appreciate you being with me.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell me all about Messages from God to His People and what readers are going to find here?
Well, basically, before and during the pandemic, God started downloading some messages to me for His people and for us to be ready for the end times, for His coming.
This is primarily a reading audience of believers that you're writing for, right?
Yes. It was message to believers, yes, because someone that does not believe, I'm not sure what they would get from it, but like the scripture says, judgment begins in the house of the Lord, and how the Apostle Paul, for example, he sent messages to the Church of Corinthians, messages to the Romans, right? So this God specifically wanted me to warn his people to make sure that we're ready.
James, is this the first time you've written and published, or have you done this kind of thing before?
This is my first book.
And once you got that first copy in, after all that work and time that you put into it, what was it like to hold this for that very first time?
Well, honestly, felt more like a relief that, okay, God, I obeyed you. I followed through with what you wanted me to, basically. It wasn't, that was basically like a relief.
And now that you're officially a published author, James, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
It's not an individual thing. You understand, I've heard people say congratulations, but I don't see it as that, right? I see it as a servant of God. I obeyed God. And to me, it would have been wrong for me not to do it. Again, it's more like a relief, because it was like a burden in my heart. You got to get this done. And then when I did, I was like, okay, God, okay, I did it,
And when you sat down to get started on this and you were working on it, James, are you the type of author that would maybe wake up early in the morning or stay up late at night and write? Or were you just writing this whenever you felt that you had the time or you felt that inspiration come on?
At first, they were just in my heart, in my head. They would, so I didn't put it to write, right? And then, I get the unction to write it. And I was, something would come up, something else would come up. But when I actually sat down, it just started to flow. Once I overcame whatever obstacles were, by the grace of God, that was prevented me from doing it, it just flowed.
What are the chances that we're going to see more writing from you here in the future?
I say it's very possible, actually. I never thought of myself as author or be writing books or anything like that. But I definitely say it's possible because there's something else that God wants me to write about also.
Mm-hmm. And being your first book, I'm sure it was a learning experience in a lot of different ways. James, do you have advice now that you could put out there for the aspiring authors who are listening to us?
So if it's a Christian author, just obey God. God likes obedience. Just obey God. For any author, I'd say, if you are giving a gift, right, because not only Christians have gifts, right? If you're giving a gift, plant that gift, right? Because, just go ahead and do it, right? Because you don't know who you may touch with your book. So it's not even like a selfish thing, but more like, you don't know. There might be somebody, like I know, for example, that I was touched by non-Christian books, like when I was young, right? And, the author don't know me from anywhere, but the book still touched me. So it's not about so much, about me, but you don't know, like somebody else somewhere, maybe years later, may read your book and be a blessing unto them or help them or inspire them. So just go ahead and do it and don't let fear keep you from doing what you're supposed to do.
Well, I think this book is going to come as a blessing to so many readers. Again, it's titled Messages from God to His People. It's written by Emmanuel Germain and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. And James, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about your work. I had a really good time talking with you.
Thank you so much, Corey. I appreciate it. Same here. God bless you.
3 Women. It's the name of the new book written by Rainee Winkler. and it's inspired by real-life experiences and personal journeys. And I'm going to find out all about this. The author, Rainee, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Rainee, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy to talk about a book that I've spent a lifetime actually in writing. It's a story about the human spirit, and it's based upon my own life history and 42 years of working as a licensed clinical social worker. One of the lines that Thoreau wrote has always stuck with me, is that people live lives of quiet desperation. And I don't believe that has to be the case. I believe that most of us, many of us at least, are capable with the right guidance of overcoming difficult past of abuse, sexual, physical, or emotional, that there is something in us, a fire, if you will, that will burn and propel us towards health if only given the right direction. The main reason I wrote the book is because in order for that to happen, and this is the most difficult part, people have to be willing to face themselves. If they cannot face their feelings or their issues, then indeed there is little or no hope that they can improve life. I work with people who come to me, sometimes really quite in bad shape because of traumatic incidences and desperate, but are ready to start the process of facing themselves. And I have seen some miraculous turnarounds, and I can't take the credit. I think that there's just something in us that wants and can work towards turning our lives around. The book is meant to be an inspiration. It is a composite of many lives. I'm in there a little bit, and how these three women overcame what at first glance looked like impossible to overcome. But they did, and it's not a hyperbole or an exaggeration. It's based on real life experience.
Rainee, were you writing this primarily for women?
There are men in it too. I mean, it certainly focuses more towards women, but there are two men in there that I talk about, not in as deep as a length as with the women, but I do talk about a husband and a father. So I would hope that men could get something out of it as well. Yeah.
So what does your writing background look like? Have you done this kind of thing before, or are you new to all this?
Oh, I published two other books, but they were meant to be nonfiction. One was called Savage Innocence, was based upon people coming out of abusive backgrounds. And then that was, about 15, 20 years ago. The other one was called The Family Where Violence Begins, Recognizing and Stopping It. It was written, directed towards actually the Columbine incident has happened at that point. I was scratching my head and asking what the world is going on and what can we do about it. And I honestly believe, for the most part, nothing is absolute, that so much violence, the seeds of violence are often, with the exception of maybe genetics, planted within the family system. So I wrote about that and then how it got portrayed in the workplace as well as schools and in the neighborhoods. I just wanted to turn the light on and say, hey, look, take a look at this. These people in the book reflect some real life situations. I do too. I come from a background of a lot of abuse. And here I am. I'm strong, I'm healthy, and happy. I can do it. Why can't they?
Do you have plans to write more in the future?
I do. Whether it'll be a sequel to this book or something else that has to do with the quote-unquote golden years, which a lot of people call the 10 years, because they're not so golden. That's something I'm thinking about right now. I'm rattling around in my head, but I will be writing for sure.
Well, it sounds like this book is going to be life-changing for a lot of readers, and I encourage, if you're listening right now, definitely check it out. Again, it's titled Three Women. It's written by Rainee Winkler and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So you can find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Rainee, it's been so nice talking with you tonight. Thanks so much for coming on the show and telling me all about your work.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me. I appreciated it.
Sitting here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, I'd like to welcome author Robert Poindexter. Robert, welcome. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate the chance, and thank you so much.
I appreciate you being here, and you have a new audiobook out. It's titled, Who Do You Think You Are? Retaking Control of Our Life. So, Robert, can you tell me what readers and audiobook listeners are going to find here?
I hope they find a way out of whatever they found themselves in now that's not successful like they want it to be. I hope they make themselves happy by deciding they can change things in their lives and fix whatever they acknowledge is wrong so that they're happier and more complete than they were before.
Robert, what kinds of readers were you speaking to here?
I'm speaking to people probably in their 40s, 50s, people that have already made some mistakes like me that really knew that they had different choices. They weren't empowered enough to make them so that they could live the life they really wanted to live because they were afraid to make the choices.
So how did the idea for this book come about, Robert? What sparked you to write it?
I spent 40 years in the ministry, and I watched so many people sitting and waiting for God or waiting for the church or waiting for the government or waiting for their relatives or somebody to fix their lives because they had gotten themselves in a situation they didn't even know that they were accountable for where they were. The choices they had made, they didn't realize that those were all their choices and nobody had made them make them. But now they're just a victim of circumstances. They're a victim of, they went to church a long time and they expect somebody to help them change and fix their life and complete them. And they just spent their whole life looking for something and never found it.
Robert, are you new to this when it comes to the writing and publishing and everything, or have you done this kind of thing before?
Well, I never published a book. Like I said, I've been in the ministry for 40 years preaching, and I guess that's all I am, is just a preacher in the book. But I'm trying to get to the place where people realize that it's not someone else that's going to save you, it's you that's going to save you.
Once you got started on Who Do You Think You Are, how long of a journey was this for you? Clear up through when it was published and out there for everyone.
Big grief, I started 25 years ago. And there's some quotes in there that go back to the 90s and the 70s. And it just sat around in my desk, and I knew I wanted to do it. But you know how the reticence works? I don't know if you know how the reticence works in your life. Anything can talk you out of it. Or anything could talk me out of it. I wrote it because I had some experiences with alcoholism, and I had some friends that were alcoholic, and I had them read it. And because I valued their opinions, I waited another 7 years to print it. And when I really found out what was driving me, it was that I didn't really want to do it yet, I guess. And after I did it, I was sorry that I didn't do it. So my whole book was, don't be grabbing into history in life and trying to bring it up to the present and fix it, because it's unfixable now. And quit living in the future, because the future doesn't get here until you bring it. So that was the whole idea. And, I came from a family where my dad was a tyrant, kind of. I don't know what made him that way, but today he'd be in jail for child beating. I'm trying to tell people, how do you get away from that kind of a thing and correct the things in your life and fix whatever's not right? Because only you have control of that now. You used to be a victim of that. You used to be in a situation where you didn't have control, and you used to be, all of those things that people taught you to be, and that we learned how to be a victim of the society, of the church, of the government, of the family, of everything in our lives. And now we realize, that wasn't that good of a thing. It didn't work out for me.
Well, this sounds like a book that I think is going to help a lot of people, and definitely go check this out. Again, it's titled, Who Do You Think You Are? Retaking Control of Our Life. This is an audiobook written by Robert Poindexter, published by the Audiobook Network. So head over to where you usually get your audiobooks, and you'll be able to find it, like Audible or iTunes or Amazon. Well, Robert, thanks again for coming on the show and telling me all about your work. I had a nice time talking tonight.
Well, I had a good time talking to you, Corey. Thanks so much for your time.
Letter of Hope is the new fantasy mystery book written by Realta Eadrom, a.k.a. Lighttone Gryphstar. And we're going to be talking all about this right here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, Realta, is here with me now. Realta, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Same here. Thank you.
Can you tell me what readers are going to find in Letter of Hope?
A place of mystery, obviously, but the main thing is a journey to find not only family, but new family.
And what sorts of readers were you writing for here?
I'm aiming for just at the edge of adulthood, not young adult, no, more like the ones that are already going out and exploring the world.
And how did the idea for this come about? What sparked this?
I was alone out in COVID, of all places, and I wanted to explore the world more. I was already past the age this book is intended for, but I felt this need to go out and explore, but I couldn't because COVID.
And how long of a journey was this for you once you started writing it, clear up through the publishing process and everything?
From, I want to say 2019 till now, roughly more than 5 years. And that was just getting the whole idea down. Bits and pieces of this idea had been bubbling in my mind long before the COVID thing started. It just was the excuse to finally get everything down on paper.
Now, is this your first time doing something like this when it comes to writing and publishing and everything, or are you familiar with everything?
No, I've written a few fanfics, a few short stories, very short. I know what I'm doing. It's just, this is the first time getting out my idea to a broader public beyond my friends.
And once you're finished with your manuscript and you hand it off to your publisher, you begin that whole publishing process, and that's pretty involved. There's a lot of things you got to do there. What did you find the most challenging part of that publishing end of things?
Figuring out where to go, figuring out what processes are needed and what are a total waste of time.
Then that day finally comes for you. You know, you've been working on this a long time and finally get the first copy in. You actually get to hold Letter of Hope. What kind of moment was that like for you?
Exhilarating. Hold the copy in my hand. It felt almost unreal. It felt like I was in a dream that wasn't going to wake me up.
And when you think about the fact that you're a published author, your work's out there for the world, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Knowing my voice is heard. That's simple.
Have you given thought to maybe a follow-up to Letter of Hope or maybe more kinds of writing here in the future?
Well, Letter of Hope is planned to be a part of a 5-book series. The next one, I've actually got a preview up online.
It can be quite a learning experience going through, especially this publishing thing for the very first time. Is there anything you might have picked up along the way of doing this that you could throw out there as advice for aspiring authors?
Yeah. Get a bare bones outline, but don't stick to it. Be as flexible as you can, okay?
I was going to ask you if you're the kind of author who has an outline and you sort of know how the story's going to go from beginning to end, because there are other authors that just maybe start with an idea or a character. They just start writing and kind of see where it goes. But it sounds like you like the outline method.
Yeah, I like the outline. One of my favorite writers, Babylon 5, you might have heard the TV series, had an outline from beginning to end, and he had to be flexible with like actors dropping out, storylines being dropped. Outline is good as long as you're flexible.
So when you were sitting down working on this, was writer's block ever an issue for you?
At first, the main thing of writer's block is just type something out. Any random thought, just let it go.
And this is a great cover. You know, you might not think of things like that right off the bat, maybe what your book's actually going to look like. And then you have to think of things like the cover. So was that a challenging process to figure out what this was going to look like?
Actually, no, I had the idea out from the beginning of the cover because it'll go into my 5-story arc. Is each cover will show the letter slowly deteriorating as the background gets better.
I like it.
So it's basically you no longer need the letter. You just need the adventure.
You know, I talk with a lot of authors, and oftentimes they love to read. So what sort of a reader would you call yourself?
I like mystery, and I love steampunk.
Well, this sounds really exciting. I think readers are really going to love it. Again, the title of the book is Letter of Hope. This is written by Realta Eadrom, a.k.a. Lighttone Gryphstar, and published by Hawes & Jenkins Publishing, so you can find it everywhere. Go on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Well, Realta, thank you so much again for telling me all about this, coming on the show. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.